Well, I guess I'll just get started here now. Welcome. My name is Janine Moy with the Vesper Meadow Education Program, and this is our second annual Butterfly Identification Workshop. And we're really excited to offer this because it'll enable us to get out in the field and actually look at butterflies outside at some beautiful locations and engage people to act as monitors, science monitors for butterfly populations as part of a new kind of ongoing study. So I'm going to start sharing my screen here. I'm logged on twice, you'll see. Tonight we're focusing specifically on butterflies in the kind of Cascade Siskiyou region, and even more specifically in the kind of more northern area where a lot of our transects for the study take place. A little note about Vesper Meadow. We are a just 3-year-old organization that is place-based, and we work to restore land and inspire a culture of land stewardship. So we engage people of all ages and all kind of backgrounds in learning skills to restore the land, engaging as scientists to monitor that restoration and that land stewardship. And together with tribes, we've been working to restore first foods on the land, and then also tell that story through art and working together with artists. Oh, so that's what this slide's about. But butterfly monitoring has been kind of a part of our programming since the beginning. And around the same time that Vesper Meadow started in early 2019, there was some studies developing throughout the Cascade Siskiyou. But why here? Why do we want to do it in this region and not just a little bit more north or a little bit more south? You might know that the Cascade Siskiyou is renowned for butterfly diversity. It has some of the highest in the United States, depending on how you count them. There can be 120 species, and this is pretty high because of the diversity of plant regions that kind of converge in the Cascade Siskiyou. And the value of monitoring is really important to show how species are surviving on the landscape, across the landscape, also over time. And there really hasn't been a comprehensive long-term monitoring effort for butterflies in this region. And I think this is particularly relevant now, given all the stresses that the natural world faces. I won't belabor those, but you know, butterflies being very specifically associated with plants are good indicators for the health of the environment. So a little bit of background here. There's been various attempts at studying butterflies in this area. The Xerxes Society established 4th of July counts. This is a good time of year to capture a lot of butterfly diversity. Happens on a one-day kind of BioBlitz style. In 1999, 2003, and 2004, Eric Rehnquist, a local ecologist, did extensive surveys throughout the Cascade Siskiyou, established a lot of the lists that we now kind of use to base our surveys off of. And then in 2005, the Xerxes Society started paying more close attention to the Marnon skipper, a very endangered butterfly. It's a federal Endangered Species Act candidate, and it makes its home in meadows of the Cascade Siskiyou. And today, there continue to be butterfly counts on the 4th of July, and those are kind of reviving the earlier ones. And so if you get excited about butterflies, you can also participate in that once-a-year event. I'll provide more information about how to get involved with that in a follow-up email to everyone. And what we're going to talk about today is the pretty new Cascade Siskiyou Butterfly Monitoring Network. We've got a fancy logo. And this was really started with the support of the Xerxes Society, coming down, doing the initial training and designating the protocol, and with the ecologist of the monument, Charlie Shells, kind of enabling it to happen and doing a lot of logistics. And then we have other partners here who host some of those surveys and kind of come together to make that happen. The Selberg Institute, Willowit Ranch, Friends of the Cascade Siskiyou National Monument, supports the education side of it, and Vesper Meadow. So the type of survey that we do as part of the monitoring network is called a POLLARD walk survey. And very simply, it's a 1 kilometer transect that you walk the same 1 kilometer every year. And the transect was picked to kind of cover different habitats in one area. And they're picked at sites all throughout the region that kind of hit different populations of butterflies and go through different elevation zones, different habitat types. And what it really is good for is capturing species richness, relative abundance, and the kind of composition of different habitats. And it's a really good way to engage a network of people. We need the masses to participate to make this happen. There's maybe close to 24 sites, and they're all over the place. And it's, you know, collectively not that much time, but the more people involved, the more data we'll have. So the protocol is to conduct it throughout the summer, April through September. Some butterflies are out earlier, some are out later, some are only out for a couple weeks. And so this kind of allows us to capture kind of the diversity of the butterfly phenology when they're out. And we do this every other week, ideally at these sites. And then just for the sake of, you know, what the butterflies are comfortable with, what they come out for, you want it to be at least 60 degrees Fahrenheit, at least partly sunny or sunnier, and no more than 10 degrees wind or 10-mile-per-hour winds. Butterflies tend to drop out of the air and take cover when it's too windy. And just because of the warmth, we do this between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. So unlike bird watching, you don't have to wake up early. And here's a list of materials. The ones on top are kind of the essentials: butterfly net to capture and release the butterflies, an insect vial to transfer it into, to examine it if you need to look at it closely for identification, a butterfly guide or brochure to check your field marks, check out what species it is, unless you go with an expert like Linda. A data sheet to record what species you're finding. And if you're not familiar with the transect yet, you'll want to have a map or GPS. There's some great apps out there where you can kind of download a map ahead of time onto your phone. And I find a camera really useful for taking photos if you don't know, you can't figure out what the butterfly is in the field. You can make sure to get a good picture of the top side of the butterfly and the bottom side of the butterfly, and then send it to either your site manager or someone that can help you identify it when you get back home. Some people also like to use flat nose forceps to hold the butterfly to kind of get a closer look and not damage it with your big clunky fingers. A thermometer can be handy to make sure you're getting the right temperature. I usually just look on my car's dashboard. You can buy some fancy close focus binoculars that allow you to examine butterflies when they're on flowers right in front of you. And if you do get to the point where you want to just record and survey alone, it's really handy to have a recorder, and then you can just speak what you're seeing instead of writing it down. The data sheet looks like this. Don't worry about observing that too closely now. Those will be provided by the site manager you might work with. But when you walk these transects, the data you'll record are just butterfly species. So it'll be the butterflies that you see 5 meters in front of you or 5 meters on either side of you, but not behind you. So you imagine a box in the front and to the sides of you, and you're either capturing those butterflies, or if you learn to identify them on the wing, those are the ones you're marking down. And then you'll be tallying those on the sheet, and you can see the columns there are marked A, B, C, D, E. There's 5 different parts of the transect. Generally, those might be going through different habitat zones. It's also important to record a 0 if you see nothing, because it could change in the next time you go. And again, you'll be able to coordinate with your site manager to find out more details, site specific, and if they have a list of species that you're likely to see that can be preloaded into your data sheet. So generally, to participate, you want to practice your butterfly ID, which you're already doing by being in this webinar. You want to connect with a site manager. So I will send out different site managers by email after this, if you'd like to sign up to survey at Vesper Meadow or in the monument or at these other sites. And you'll pick a day with them. They might go out with you or give you some directions if you're already familiar with the place. You'll conduct the survey, and then you'll have the option to submit the data yourself or to your site manager. And what's really cool is this data is housed online. So you can see previous data, you can see other people participating, and that's all at pollardbase.org. This is what that looks like. You'll see other butterfly projects throughout the US here. And to make a login, you kind of follow the steps on the web page, and you'll just have to get approval by the administrator, someone at the Xerxes Society who's super friendly. So that's pollardbase.org. And I think this is just such a wonderful opportunity to explore our region. You'll get to go to beautiful places and look at butterflies. It's literally like going to heaven. Vesper Meadow, heaven. Willowit, heaven. Grizzly Peak, managed by the Selberg Institute, beautiful. And so many places in the monument. There's meadows, creek areas, mountain bluffs. It's really such a great opportunity to get out and to contribute to science. Here's a couple of highly recommended books to get started and take you through a lifelong journey of getting to know butterflies. And something more specific to the region, especially if you come to Vesper Meadow or go to some of the transects in the northern part of the Cascade Siskiyou, is this butterfly guide. It's a fold out with 80 species of butterflies that you're very likely to see. They're grouped by families. It's only a couple bucks. You can get it at the Northwest Nature Shop in Ashland or at vespermeadow.org under resources. You can also look online and or submit data to these places if you want to be involved in other kind of wider community science efforts. Butterflies of America and Butterflies and Moths, or BAMONA websites, have just a ton of photos. So it's a really good place to cross-reference what you find. And if you're someone that uses iNaturalist already, website or app, you can go in and look at this developing project called Butterflies and Moths of the Cascade Siskiyou National Monument. Upload what you find, your observation, add it to this project, and help build that up for the online community there. All right, so that was kind of a long story short of the Pollard walks. I hope you get involved. We'll take questions at the end. You can put a question in the chat so we can circle back if you have more questions at this time about the survey process. But I'd like to just do a brief introduction to Linda Kappen. She's lived in the Applegate for maybe over 40 years. And I've come to know her because I became interested in butterflies, and she's been interested in butterflies for a long time now, largely self-taught, spent a lot of time with books and in the field. And when I took a butterfly class at the Siskiyou Field Institute, she was supporting the teaching of that. Here she is. I didn't show her face because she would rather show the face of the butterflies. But if you're also interested to connect more with Linda, she monitors butterflies and moths of the Pacific Northwest, a page on Facebook that is very lively. People upload what they're finding. Linda and other people ID those butterflies, and there's a lot of discussion around it. It's another great resource to get to know butterflies that you find around here. All right. You want to say hi? Got Linda here right now. She's going to say
everybody. Hi. Welcome. And we're going to go through some butterflies real lightly and not too much detail, but to cover some butterflies that we'll most likely see in Southern Oregon here as we do our pollard walks. So if we want to get started,
yep,
we'll go through and look at them. So this is just a diagram of a simple diagram of butterflies and moths. So you can tell the difference. So the top row is the butterfly. And with butterflies are skippers because they're butterflies. And the antenna of the skipper, as you see, is hooked with a knob. And the butterfly has straight antenna with knob on the top. And moths will have feathery antenna, which is usually the male, and a thin line antenna for a female. And their bodies tend to be fatter, most of them, depending on species. So next. Skippers we're going to talk about. We're going to go through some families. I'll say them and I'll do the common names of the families. Skippers, Parnassians and Swallowtails, whites, sulphurs, and marbles. We'll go through the blues, coppers, hairstreaks, and elfins, and all the brushfoots, which include many butterflies. Okay, so this is the Mardon skipper, and I'm not sure if Janine wants to say a special word about it, but it's been kind of rare in places, but they have found a lot of populations of it, but those populations can be very threatened. And so this is a very special butterfly that we all look for, and it is at Vesper Meadow. And there's the face of it. Isn't it cute?
I just put that one there because it's so cute.
So anyway, so that's a great thing to look for. So here we have a couple of skippers here. The northern cloudy wing and the silver spotted skipper. The silver spotted skipper also has some distinctive markings with the wings closed. And these you can find, well, I know the silver spotted you can find just about anywhere from the valley floor to the mountains. And northern cloudy wings, I think generally might be a little higher elevation around here. And here we have some other skippers, and one is a dun skipper. I've mostly seen those in meadows, you know, in the Illinois Valley or over here in some of the meadows. And woodland skippers are pretty much everywhere. Here's some more skippers. There's an Arctic skipper who has some pretty distinctive markings, as you see. They're bigger spots, and also with the wings closed, there are big yellowish spots with, I think, black outlines, and they're very distinctive looking. Two-banded checker skipper is on the upper edge of the wings and the lower edge, they both have bands, like say two-banded, you know, the white and the black. Okay. Here's another bunch of skippers. And if you look at the differences, I'd like to show you some of these skippers, and you'll see a few more, have pretty white markings and in different patterns. And so that's how you get to know them, is by these displayed here. This is a little more yellowish. Some of them will have yellower markings. The Sonora skipper has a definite U shape, and it's pretty clean compared to the Mardon skipper, which sometimes I think they can be confused in the field depending on the age of the butterfly. But if you notice that the Mardon was a little bit more muddled together. So next. Common checkered skipper is pretty obvious. They, on open wing, they kind of look similar to the two-banded, but only the upper wings, I think, have the bands, and markings are different, and they're pretty obvious too once you get to know them. Juba skipper and a Western branded skipper, real white patterns in there. So you can see how some of them are connected and shaped on the wings. And then they have some bright yellow, orange. In these areas tend to be brighter orange up here than some of the other skippers. And now we have a group of DuskyWings here. This one was identified as a Perseus DuskyWing. Some of these can be difficult between the Perseus, Propertius, and Pupius, which I don't think is here. But I was told by my expert friend, Dana, that this was a Perseus. And this dreamy DuskyWing, you can definitely see the difference in these two types, or these, because of the color and the patterns on the marginal edges right here. I've never seen one, actually. Next. Okay, so, well, back to the skippers. I meant to say that a lot of the skippers will use grasses. There are some skippers that will use like legumes. And there was even one that used lupins, mallows. They use mallows and grasses. So that's going to be where you're going to find a lot of your skippers, where all these weedy growth is and stuff, and in the mountains. Parnassians and Swallowtails. Okay, so there's two Parnassians that we have. Clodius Parnassian and Rocky Mountain Parnassian. The differences in those for identification, sometimes the Clodius will be right here, it's pretty white, but it can have a yellowish cast to it. The Mountain Parnassian is definitely a white with an inky black and bright red spots. But there's also, the difference is in the antenna. This is black. Yeah, you can barely see it on this one. But the antenna is black and white, all the way up and down. So that's the definite, and they both use different host plants. The Mountain Parnassian will be higher in the mountains, and they use sedum. And the Clodius Parnassian can be a little bit down lower also, and they use bleeding heart. And our Mountain Parnassian down here has sort of an endemic species called Sterninsky. So that's our special thing here for those two. 5 swallowtails we would see in this area. One is Indra, the black one. Very distinctive and very sought after by a lot of people. Western tiger swallowtail, the two-tailed swallowtail. If you look, there's 2 tails. the anise swallowtail, which is not as big as some of the others, but it's flatter and wider and shorter, but very beautiful. The pale tiger, which looks a lot like the western tiger, but it is more of a whitish cast, creamy white, and some beautiful colors. And um, the two-tailed is our largest, and it can get up to about 5 inches across. I don't know if you can see behind this, but the wings go up a little bit higher, and they're just bigger. It's just a bigger butterfly, and it's a little lighter yellow than the western tiger swallowtail. So here we have a group called whites, marbles, and sulphurs. Okay, so the whites, after you're out surveying, try not to be too intimidated by them. The three on the bottom are very easily identified. Pine white has a definite look. It's a really light butterfly, and it kind of floats through the air and just kind of like it's floating down from the pine trees. It's really a wonder to watch. It's beautiful. And the margined white is out right now. It's flying everywhere. And if you see someone asked why margin, well, the lines, it has black lines that outline the cells. Okay. And the cabbage white is pretty much everywhere, and probably maybe the first butterfly you'll see in the spring. Um, and Is not native to here, but it's here, so we enjoy it too. And the ones on the top: Becker's white, spring white, western white. Um, there's one white that's not shown here. It's a checkered white. Not sure how often we would come across it. Um, Becker's white can be found, and spring white and western white. And sometimes it is hard to identify between these two, and especially the western white and the checkered white. Could require an expert to find out the differences for you. So in these cases, I suggest I go back to the beginning when Janine was talking about materials to bring, and a camera and a viewing jar of some sort, or a vial that's see-through, to take photos of the wings while they're open, even if you get just half of one wing. And then especially the ventral view on the side, like these are shown, get all of this as much as you can, and take several photos, because sometimes they don't really come out. And then photos can help identify just as much as a real species, real butterfly. So take your time with that. And if you're, but if you're out on the survey and any of these butterflies, any colors, anything, and you don't catch it, you don't see it, you just call out white butterfly, orange butterfly. So sometimes you just can't identify them all. Next. And here we are with the marbles. And these are probably the most common marbles you'll see around here, in the larger part of the places. Gray marble is up in the mountains, mostly, like probably 3,000, 4,000 feet, starting. And large marbles, the same, and they can be close to the valley floor though. Sarah's orange tip are just everywhere. They're pretty obvious. So those are three pretty obvious ones. There are some other marbles like this that have similar markings, but after examining them for a couple of years or maybe a few times, you'll get to know them. Next in, we have sulphurs. Okay, so this is a special group. Clouded sulphur. I think that around this area, we would see them more toward eastern Jackson County, and then over on toward the Cascade Siskiyou National Monument, Vesper Meadow, and other places that we mentioned. I'm going to skip over to the orange sulphur, which is on this side. And that is pretty much everywhere. And it's fine right now. And it's very beautiful in its spring form. And the Western sulphur in the middle is uh, classified now. Here we have a special one called Primordialis. It's Coleus occidentalis primordialis. And we discovered that up at Vesper Meadow, Sampson Creek, and Bigelow Lakes area also. So it's up there and it's around. It can be in large numbers in the summer in the Cascade Siskiyou National Monument areas. Okay, now we're to gossamer wings, which is a family of the blues. Um, and in this family is coppers, hairstreaks, blues, elfins, and we'll go through a few. These are the most two common ones we're going to go through of the coppers here that we would see everywhere around here. Edith's copper and the great copper sometimes can get confused, but if you notice that you see a copper like this with great big brown spots and white around it and a whitish background and very beautiful. And then you go and you see another one that's kind of less marked than that, way less marked. And those are the great coppers. Okay, and purplish copper. And go to next. The next one, lilac bordered copper and the purplish copper, kind of people get a little confused about those, especially when the wings are open. But the lilac bordered copper has an area here of a lilac pinkish color. And then we have a tailed copper, which is really unmistakable. It's just really beautiful. And if you see, these have little tails on them. So that's why they're all called, it's called a tailed copper. Blue coppers, they use buckwheat. They're usually up higher elevation. They can be, this is a female, and this can be almost white sometimes, and on the male also. And the male is blue, as most blues are. We have hairstreaks. Okay, so the hairstreaks have these tails like this here, and you see here. This one doesn't have, these don't have quite as big of tails, but these are pretty obvious on these. They kind of use these tails in ways, they rub them together and to fool predators. And also if a bird is going to nip them, they might just get the tail and not the whole butterfly. So they have some very beautiful orange markings, and the gray hair streak, if you'll notice, it's more of a line right here, black with kind of broken line, more than like the California hair streak has a row of dots. Okay. And then the next one is more hair streaks. So we have a hedgerow hair streak. You can see the little tails on that. Cedar hair streak and the golden hair streak. A hedgerow hair streak has quite a different pattern and than the cedar hair streak. If you want to compare, the cedar hair streak is again more of a row of a line that's kind of straight and not much of this. And very nice colors can come with those. The purplish, I guess, lavenderish colors and browns, and they're pretty distinctive. The golden hair streak you'll find around its host plants in the mountains like chinkapins or tan oaks. And that's where they hang out, really, is just on those trees. And that's about it for those, because that's where they live and that's where they mate, in those trees, and they fly around the forest right there by them. Um, Here's the blues. They're a pretty complex group of butterflies. Almost always it's going to take somebody that knows the blues very well to completely identify them for you. Akamon blue is very easy to get to know around here because it's pretty much everywhere. I mean, meadows in nearby towns, low elevations, a little bit higher. With my experience has shown me lupin blues around here, which is not pictured here, are at very much higher elevations. And Pacific dotted blue, those will be at your higher elevations where you might be doing some of these surveys. Um, and then there's the summit blue. And so you see by looking at that, and there are a couple other butterflies here and there, but if you know the areas where these butterflies are supposed to be, it's pretty much going to be those that are here. And the western tailed blue, there's also an eastern tailed blue that is almost just like the western tailed blue, but I find that from my field experience that the eastern tailed blue seemed to be smaller than the western tailed blue, and a few subtle differences, but there are some differences. And so that's another one that you have to look at. Um, and photos, again, just like I mentioned before, especially on the blues, those ventral photos and those dorsal photos, even if it's just half the wing open or whatever. I mean, anything that would help somebody identify it, upper and lower wing preferably. Okay, here's some more blues that some of them you've probably seen around. Okay, so greenish blue is like pretty much everywhere in the meadows at a certain time of year. Um, and it's easy to get to know. Um, but again, it's another one you want to look at as you're getting to know butterflies. Western azure. Um, it is one of the earliest spring butterflies there is, and they're just everywhere, and they like to puddle in little groups in the mud. And that's what you see, most likely is what you're seeing in the springtime when you go up in the mountains and it just rained and there's a big mud puddle. There's a bunch of puddle with a bunch of butterflies on them. There'll be a mixture of those and the other guys that come out pretty early, like either DuskyWings or overwintering butterflies. As silvery blue is pretty much obvious. No real orange markings on that one. Definite dots, black circles, dots, excuse me, and then with a white outline on them. And the male is blue with the open wing and the female is brown. There's a lot of silvery blues right now this year, as a note. Bois de Val's blue, they can be on the valley floor to upper elevations. I kind of hardly can see this picture here. That's where some of the websites we have and the books will come in handy. There are some markings with the black dots and white around them here and here. And then there's a white spot in here in the middle part that helps you identify the Bois de Val's blue. And they can look different in different places. Anna's blue, they can be very variable, but they have, a little bit of orange through here. And they're very beautiful when they open. And again, female brown, male blue. Um, so I've seen them heavily marked. I've seen them hardly marked at all on this wing. So much that I couldn't believe that it was really an Anna's blue. Okay, so here's some Elfins. Um, the Western Pine Elfin, which is actually, there's a lot of those this year too. And they have some very distinctive markings and they can be very beautiful. This one is kind of backlit from the sun, so you can't really see the deep colors there. But you can look those up online and or somewhere in a book and look at them, and they're just absolutely wonderful to see. Um, Brown Elfins are pretty much brown, and this one is showing a lot of detail. This photo here, so that's a real good thing. And there's some detail there, but they're little Elfins and they're brown, and they kind of have a stubby little like almost tail looking thing started there, but not really. Okay, here's Brushfoot's family, the Nymphalidae family of the butterflies, very large family. Here's a common ringlet. They use grasses, so they're going to be everywhere. We got a lot of grasses here, and they will just be in really high numbers some years. And I haven't really met a low number year of them yet. Still waiting this year to see if that's going to happen, but I haven't been to all my spots for that. But they're they can vary throughout the region, and even here they can vary from here to the monument, and that you will still have this look, but sometimes they can be a little bit more orange. And they're pretty plain, and they kind of fly around, and you might think they're a moth, but they're a butterfly. But they fly around in the grasses mostly and hang out above the grasses. Okay, so we have some wood nymphs here. Wood nymphs use, well, at least the common wood nymph uses various grasses, and these are the two most likely you'll run into in these areas. So the common wood nymph, as you see, has 2 eye spots, and they're usually about the same size, and it's a pretty big butterfly. It can be, and I also like to look at these here, and then we have the margin area to look at. So this one is, to me, seems like a light one, but it was very big and very beautiful, and that was taken in the Siskious. And this one is the Great Basin wood nymph, and that one is a little bit smaller and darker. And its eye spots here, you can barely see that one, but you have an eye spot, and then it's a bit smaller of an eye spot. And sometimes on these, well, and on this one, there can be other little spots, very much smaller than these, like way smaller. And so there's just different looks of them, and it takes a while to get to know them, but, and they just kind of fly around. They fly around in the woods, and they just kind of fly low. And believe it or not, and they're kind of low and slow, but they're kind of hard to catch sometimes to look at. So they can be fun. And Checkerspots. So these would be most likely to be seen around here. Edith's Checkerspot, very brightly colored and beautiful. And there's a thing that you can read in the book, Bob Pyle and Caitlin LeBar's book, that tells about a thing called the Edith line. Okay, and it looks at the back of the wing and shows where it is in the front of the wing. Northern Checker Spot, those are flying right now. You may have seen them flying around. just this past week or so. I don't have, we don't have the other, like, other side of the wing to show you, but you can look those in a book or a pamphlet. And snowberry checker spot, if you notice, it's pretty dark and beautiful, and it has a lot of white markings and reddish, more reddish here and here and here. Okay. So this will depend on where you're at. Use a snowberry for a host plant. So more than likely, if you're around a lot of snowberries, that's probably what it's going to be. Leonera checker spot. I have never run into one in the Cascade Siskiyou National Monument, but I have in the Siskiyous. And so those are very beautiful, very distinctive, unmistakable. Okay, so next we have crescents. Two most likely ones here and easiest to learn, of course, are Mylita crescent and the field crescent. Mylitas have been flying for probably over a month now, and field crescents, I don't think I've seen one yet, but they should be coming along here pretty quick. Field crescents are a lot darker, and the Mylita is a lot lighter colored with more orange showing. Okay, we have Vanessa's, the ladies, American lady, painted lady, West Coast lady, and the red admirable, which is unmistakable. The American lady has two very large eye spots. You see them right here. And they have brown around them. And then some nice colors here. And it can be quite larger than the rest of these, excuse me, butterflies. Painted ladies are pretty much everywhere all the time. And they have 4 to 5 spots right here. They all look different with their wings open. The West Coast lady, you can see here that it has 4. So with its wings closed, like the ones to the left, it will have those spots showing through like this also. But these are a definite 4. There is more open pattern, not really much patterning through here on the West Coast lady. And these, a lot of people use these areas right here for identifying these two. I'm not sure. I would think that this would be, whoops, I went too far. I would think that this American lady would be easier to recognize than these two from a distance. So, and this has kind of a square tip too. But anyway, the West Coast lady, after you get, if you see one and then you see a painted lady, you're gonna know the difference because they're very beautiful. What I noticed about the ladies are a good example on flight patterns. This is something you get to know after a couple of years with butterflies, the different flight patterns of the different species, the different whites, the different blues, everything. The painted lady usually zooms by, like it's really in a hurry, and they're pretty crazy. They do stop though. And the West, if they're all flying at the same time, the West Coast lady seems to float among the flowers more and do that kind of a thing. And like I said, the red admiral is pretty unmistakable. Okay, we have sister, California sister, and Lorquin's admiral. Those two you often see together, like really together in the mountains. They like to hang out on dog poop, and they like to hang out on any kind of anything like that. when they're getting nutrients. The California sister is a prized butterfly for people to find and look at because they're just so beautiful and they don't really occur completely everywhere in Oregon. So, and the Admiral, Laura Quinn's Admiral, is here. It has its markings like this. The tips of the sister are big and orange, okay? And then if you see Laura Quinn's Admiral, it's usually just right here on the margin. And it's kind of a little bit different color, orange, but it only goes a little ways down, okay? So they're two easy ones to tell apart for sure. When their wings are open and they're together, one of them has concave wings and one has convex. So that's kind of a way to look at them too. Fritillaries is a most confusing group of butterflies. They almost always require an expert opinion on what they are. People can sit and talk about them for hours. And after you get to know, these are pretty much the basic ones that you'll see out here. Great Basin can have silvered spots. Okay. The Clippy can also, I think, have silvered, and it after you see some of these, like these are pretty common ones. You see them quite a few times, you'll recognize them. But when we're out on pollard walks, because they are so complicated, if you can't catch one and you just see one fly by, you just record it as one orange, or if you know that it was some kind of fritillary, you'll say one fritillary. So they don't always get caught. When you do, though, this is very important for identification purposes. If somebody's really trying to keep track of what they're seeing, you need to have this photo be on the ventral wing. You need to have this visible and this visible for identification purposes. Plus, it doesn't hurt to take an open wing photo of it as well. Okay, and the same thing with the Hydaspes. Can hardly see the markings on this one, but if you just look at these, glance at these two from here to here, you'll see some different colors and markings. So with these, if you really want to get picky about them, the photos, the better the photo, the better chance you'll get an answer for a true ID. Western meadow frit is a smaller fritillary, and frit for short. They're very orange and beautiful, and they fly around the meadows. And sometimes they can be kind of big, and but they're considerably smaller than most fritillaries, and a lot more orange showing. As you can see, there's a lot more space in there. And when their wings are closed, they have a distinctive markings that are very beautiful that you can see, like if you buy the book or if you get online and look at photos of them. Okay, so here we have a couple of guys, California tortoiseshell and morning cloak, and they can be some of the very, very first ones out in the winter because they do overwinter as adults. And so you could go out someday in January or February and see a California tortoiseshell on nice days that we have down here in Southern Oregon. Same with the morning cloaks. And also, I think back to the red admirable. I saw one in February once, so that kind of tells me that they do some overwintering as well. Oh, okay. So here's a couple more northern Buckeye and the Great Arctic. The Buckeye obviously is not hard to tell from anything else. I mean, it is so beautiful. If you see one of these, you'll just be like in awe because they're just really pretty, and they can be brightly colored. They can be faded a little bit older, but a brand new one is just absolutely wonderful. Um, the Great Arctic, um, it's I mostly see I've seen that like real close to the valley floor in a logged over area over by the Applegate, and that was the very first place that we saw them, and we looked them up, and it's supposed to be a butterfly of every 2 years, but meaning that it takes a couple years for them to come out of their chrysalis. But um, I think that there's just so many that I mean they're either on the year or off the year, and they're there every year. So I see them every year. But they're really a cool looking butterfly. They really blend in with bark really well, and they have a really nice orange color with some spots, of course. Not big and elaborate or anything like this, but really beautiful. Now we have comas or angle wings. Well, there's one angle wing here. This is the green coma, and if you look at these, and you notice all three of these have slightly different colors to them. The hoary coma in the middle is grayish, more tannish to grayish. The green coma can have all these patterns and lines, and there's definitely, I can kind of see through here, a greenish cast, which of course it's a green coma. So, and then when they open their wings, they all have different types of markings that help you identify it also. Um, this particular one, I took this photo. This was at Crater Lake when we surveyed there, and it's just sucking on the little thing that's at the viewpoint. There's nothing there, but there was something there for it. And satyr angle wings, they fly around in the forest. They use what's that plant? Stinging nettles. So there's some stinging nettle butterflies that we have, like about 3 of them. That one is like a brownish color, and they all have these little markings right here. You see those? They're different shapes. Sometimes people like to use those, but sometimes, you know, they can be kind of similar. So you have to be sure. And of course, there's the Western monarch, and well, you know, it's been pretty sketchy for it lately on the West Coast, the Western migration. You can find out all about that with our page, Southern Oregon Monarch Advocates, and David James' page, Monarch Butterflies in the Pacific Northwest. We keep up on it really well. We study them, and so some more new news has come out about them, but they're pretty obvious. If anybody sees one, be sure and let us know. We'd appreciate it very much. Get a picture if you can, so we can be sure it's a monarch, because the monarch is always confused with other butterflies like the yellow tiger swallowtail or the California tortoiseshell even. And even painted ladies, like people think they're monarchs and they're not. And so we like photos. Okay. And that's about it. I think I just want to stress that if you get involved in this, like Janine says, it's really wonderful. It's a really great way to go hiking and get down and really enjoy nature, the flowers, the butterflies. And it really makes you feel a sense of purpose to help out with this, because it is important right now, especially in times of climate change. So we're hoping to see that this is going to be good data for us to use in the future.
Thanks, Linda.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I learn something new every time.
You did?
I didn't know the commas like nettles.
Oh, well, it's just one
Yeah.
at the Seder. I wrote an apple. I forgot to mention the alligator because I write a story in there every month.
Oh, mention it.
Are they on?
Yeah.
Oh, you're on still. Well, okay. So we have this local newspaper for our watershed called the Applegator News Magazine. So I've been writing stories for that since about 2013. So it's a quarterly newspaper if you're interested, and you can also look it up online. But I did write a story about the 3 butterflies that use stinging nettles, and so I kind of write the stories with just kind of like their looks, where they live, what they eat, and just personal experiences. So there's some identifying features I talk about, and then their habitats, and then there's always that local personal experience that you can get into because it is in your backyard. So that's a good thing to do, and I highly stress everybody buying the book Butterflies of the Pacific Northwest. And I have a copy right here that I carry around all the time. And that's about it. And I think that there's some websites on there. There's a lot of good people to go to and ask questions. You can always email us. I have a group of expert friends that are actually entomologists. They know a heck of a lot more than I do. So I often go to my people for help if I can't figure something out.
Well, thanks again, Linda.
You're
That was
welcome.
awesome.
Thank you, everybody.
If anyone else has questions, I've been kind of answering them a little bit in the chat, but feel free to drop more questions in the chat. And again, I'll follow up with everyone that registered and I have their email. I'll send you some resources and more information about connecting to go out and do pollard walks this summer, or right now through the rest of the summer. And again, thanks for coming this evening. This has been recorded, and so we will be putting it on the Vesper Meadow YouTube channel. You can share it with your friends or watch it again for practice. And last call for questions. Any more questions in the chat? Thank you for saying thank you. It's good to be here and see all of you. All right, well, have a good night and sweet dreams of butterflies. Oh, Jen asks, which book do you recommend? I like The Butterflies of the Pacific Northwest. It's more specific to this area. Okay, good night.